Hello and welcome to my latest video on Jurassic World Alive. And in today's video I'm going to be covering off Ceratosaurus. So this creature was introduced in the 2.23 update, and what I'm going to do is show you how it compares against some of the meta creatures already in the game. So if you've got Ceratosaurus or you're thinking of getting it and you want to know how effective it might be in the game, this is definitely the video for you. Okay, so let's get right into it. So let's just go over Ceratosaurus abilities and resistances, etc. Just to remind you. So in terms of abilities, it's got a heavy strike as its number one ability, and this does a cleanse of reduced damage and vulnerability, and removes speed increases of its target, does a precise attack of ×1, and bypasses armor and dodge. And next we have a new move which is Lacerate. So this is its damage over time move. So it does a 1.33 times attack. It does a 25% of max HP damage over time, and that lasts for 4 turns. Okay, it has a cooldown of 3. And next up we have the big hitting Resilient Rampage. This does a cleanse, reduced damage of Ceratosaurus, and then it does on its target, it will remove cloak, dodge, and any speed increases applied, do a ×2 attack, and makes that creature vulnerable for 2 attacks lasting 2 turns. Delay of 1, cooldown of 1. Next up we have its priority move, Intimidate. So this reduces the speed by 50% over 4 attacks and 2 turns of its opponent, and cleanses itself and increases attack and armor by 25% for 4 attacks, 2 turns. Delay of 1, cooldown of 2. So also has a counter attack called Piercing Headbutt. I love that name. So it increases its armor by 10% for 2 attacks, 1 turn, and increases damage for 10%, 2 attacks, 2 turns, and also attacks its target 1 times and bypassing armor and dodge. And it also has a no escape, so if its target tries to escape, doesn't have resistance to that, then it won't be able to swap, and that lasts 1 turn. For those who are looking to enhance Ceratosaurus, it has a reactive ability, so at the end of the turn, if it's locked down, it'll get a 10% heal of its max HP. In terms of resistances, it's got 100% resistance to stun, damage over time, and speed decreases. It's got a 75% resistance to reduced damage, 50% resistance to rend and armor decreases, and 33% resistance to vulnerability. So that's Ceratosaurus. You'll see there on the slide I've also got a boost profile. This is just what I think at the moment. So I put 15, or I haven't put on, but this is what I intend to. 15 boosts on health, 10 on damage, and 5 on speed. But you will see what's in terms of what's coming up. Speed makes very little difference, as there's only one meta creature that it actually makes a difference on, and you'll see that shortly. In terms of, first of all, identifying what are the meta creatures, so I've gone on to the JWA Toolbox. You can see it on the screen here. If you're not aware of JWA Toolbox, I couldn't recommend it highly enough. It has lots of features. A lot of you will have seen raid strategy infographics. Those come from this site. In addition, it has this popularity tier list by update version. So it looks at the top 50 PvP players and looks at what creatures are used in those teams. And there you have it. So there you have the top 9 creatures. So those are the ones I'm going to compare Ceratosaurus with, and we'll see how it gets on against each one. So first up, Atrocodistus. So this is very much a battle of the counter attackers. So both creatures have counter attacks. So really it's best if you can not do an attack initially, so you're not getting that counter attack. So first off, Atrocodistus is going to do a accelerated shield distraction. It's going to give it 50% shield protection for 4 attacks, 2 turns, and more importantly, it's not going to get a counter attack from Ceratosaurus. Ceratosaurus turn 1 is going to do Lacerate, which is its damage over time move, but it's very much around the counter attacks here. Turn 2, Atrocodistus is likely to do a sheltering impact to cleanse that damage over time and boost its health. It's going to get an attack in as well, so it'll also get a counter attack from Ceratosaurus, and Ceratosaurus can do an Intimidate move to boost its armor and its attack, and more importantly, not get a counter attack from Atrocodistus. And then in turn 3, Atrocodistus is going to do a Berserk Resilient Rampage as its best option. It's just going to come up short in terms of defeating Ceratosaurus. Ceratosaurus is going to do its counter. It's got that increased attack, and then it's got Resilient Rampage again, boosted, or not boosted, but increased attack to take down Atrocodistus. But it is very close, this battle, and if anyone's getting a crit, it may well change the result of the battle. So Ceratosaurus has got some pros and cons there on the left. So a lot of pros and not many cons. Pros, it's very much around its resistance. It's got damage over time resistance. It's got damage reduction resistance. It's resistant to stun, resistant to speed decrease. It has a counter attack and removes dodge and cloak on quite a few of its abilities. Its con is you've got a shield up, it can't penetrate the shield. Okay, it will not remove shields. Okay, so that's the best defense against Ceratosaurus. Okay, let's move on to Pyrorixis now. In most cases, Pyrorixis will have the speed advantage over Ceratosaurus, but with Ceratosaurus' counterattack, this really isn't any advantage for Pyrorixis. Pyrorixis' defense relies heavily on its dodge, nullification and stun abilities, but with Ceratosaurus resistant to stun and has abilities which bypass dodge, this leaves little for Pyrorixis to use with any real effect. Ceratosaurus, on the other hand, has damage over time and counterattacks, which make short work of Pyrorixis, who ultimately bleeds out in turn 1. Next up we have Dsungascorpios, and because it knows that Ceratosaurus is rubbish with shields, it's probably going to do shielded lockdown as its first move. That will give it protection for 2 attacks and 1 turn. And also ensures Ceratosaurus doesn't get its counter attack in. However, Ceratosaurus is going to open up with its Lacerate move. Turn 2, it's going to do its Resilient Rampage move. It's going to get a counter attack in, and then because it's got the speed advantage, it's going to get that attack in on turn 3 and take down Dsungascorpios. But again, a very, very close match, and you know, if Dsungascorpios is getting a crit in, that could be the difference. Okay, next up we're gonna have another flock. Different outcome though this time. So Ceratosaurus is kind of geared for defeating flocks. You know, it's got that counter attack, so it's getting 2 attacks in, so conceivably it's taking down 2 of the 3 flock members. And while Compsoraptor does have dodge in its arsenal, it's not going to make any difference for its defense, because Ceratosaurus has moves that go through dodge. Compsoraptor also has no damage over time resistance, so you'd think Lacerate would be a great move for Ceratosaurus, but it's simply not enough. So Compsoraptor's secret weapon here is its Rally Heal that's associated with its Alert Shattering Impact ability while in a threatened state. So predictably, Ceratosaurus has taken down 2 of the Compsoraptor flock members, so Compsoraptor's down to 1. That means it's in a threatened state. So turn 2, it does its Alert Shattering Impact, gets its extra flock member, which allows the damage over time not to take down Compsoraptor, and gets in the attack to take down Ceratosaurus. So Compsoraptor win. Okay, on to Deinonychus. So both creatures have got counter attack moves. So the key to winning here is avoiding those counter attacks. So Deinonychus is going to start with Crushing Prowl. It's not an attack move. It's actually boosting its critical hit chance. It's also doing dodge, which actually doesn't make any difference to Ceratosaurus, but it is that boosted attack that is key here. So Ceratosaurus does a lacerate move simply because that's the largest amount of damage from a kind of a turn one move option. It's going to get a counter from Deinonychus, and then turn two, very much kind of not boosted, but you know, Deinonychus has got an elevated damage now. Does its devouring wound. It's going to do over 7,000 damage, and that's more than enough to take down Ceratosaurus. Okay, another dog, another wolf. So, Indolycan. So, despite Indolycan having no resistance to damage over time, and its dodge abilities can be removed by Ceratosaurus, Indolycan's best weapon here is Cloak of Rage. Okay, again, like Deinonychus, it's not an attack move, it's just setting itself up nicely for turn two. As usual, Ceratosaurus is doing its biggest attack move for turn one. It's doing Lacerate. It's doing damage over time on Indolycan. However, turn two, Indolycan's doing its evasive Ferocious Rampage, doing massive amounts of damage, more than enough to take down Ceratosaurus in turn two. So, Tyrannocaring. So it has resistance to damage over time, which you'd think is great to nullify that lacerate move from Ceratosaurus on turn one. And Tyrannocaring's main attack, Dispersed Raking Impact and Merciless Alert, both of which do 1.5 damage, just simply isn't enough to take down Ceratosaurus, especially as Dispersed Raking Impact doesn't bypass Ceratosaurus's 10% armor. So Ceratosaurus has got its counter attack, it's got its big hitting resilient rampage, and that's more than enough for Ceratosaurus to take down Tyrannocaring. Gemini is probably the top dog in terms of the meta at the moment. It's going to start off with Shielding Alert Rampage to give it 50% protection over 2 turns and 4 attacks. Plus, it also has a 2 times attack on there. It'll get a piercing headbutt counter from Ceratosaurus, but that's not going to have very much effect at all. Turn 2, Gemini is going to do its Harden ability, and this will finish off Ceratosaurus. Ceratosaurus, it's got its Lacerate for turn 1, and it's got its Resilient Rampage, but it's simply not enough to take down Gemini in 2 turns. And Gemini has got its counter, and it's got its attacks, and that's enough to take down Ceratosaurus. So I've left the best till last. Tryannometradon. Talk about RNG dependent. I've got 2 strategies here, and both could possibly have 2 different outcomes depending on crits. The first one here starts off turn 1. Tryannometradon is doing Tyrant's Roar to get that speed advantage. Ceratosaurus is going to do Lacerate, and it's got its piercing headbutt counter on turn 1, and then turn 2, Tryannometradon comes in with its big hit to take down Ceratosaurus. However, that damage over time from that Lacerate move will take down Tryannometradon as well. If it manages to resist damage over time for both those turns, then Tryannometradon wins. However, if Ceratosaurus gets a crit hit for either of its Lacerate or piercing headbutt attacks, then it's all over in turn 1, regardless of whether Tryannometradon has resisted damage over time. So very much random outcomes for random actions, really. Okay, the next strategy I've got is the best one for Tryannometradon. It's the one that gives it the best chance to actually win. Okay, so Ceratosaurus will only win if it gets a crit hit Otherwise, it's a win for Tryannometradon. So in this strategy, Tryannometradon takes advantage of its threatened state on turn 2, okay, for its Tyrant's Roar. So turn 1, it's doing a big attack, and its health will be seriously depleted as a result of the lacerate and the piercing headbutt counter, but that gets it into a threatened state, which then for Tyrant's Roar gives it the priority attack, and that should be enough to take down Ceratosaurus. But as I said, if Ceratosaurus gets a crit in either of its lacerate or piercing headbutt moves, it will win. So as you can see, overall it's pretty split between the 9. We've got 4 very clear wins for Ceratosaurus. We've got 4 very clear losses for Ceratosaurus, and then we've got kind of one that's kind of dependent on RNG. It's mostly going to be a Ceratosaurus win. That's why it's a tick, but there is a chance for Tryannometradon to get a win if it resists damage over time and has a little bit of luck on its side. So there you go. What do you think of Ceratosaurus? For me, it's actually better than I thought it was. My initial thoughts, admittedly mine is at level 25 and not at level 30, as in this video, but it actually come out a lot better against the meta creatures than I had anticipated. But what do you think? Do you think it's worth pursuing? In terms of the simulations I've gone through, I've used the JWA Toolbox to run through different scenarios between Ceratosaurus and the meta creatures, and the outcomes are what I presented today. So I hope you found that useful. As I said, it's certainly a better creature than I thought it was. There's no enhancements on any of the creatures. I've kept everything at level 30, and in terms of boosts, I've taken the boost profiles from some of the top players in the game, what they're using, and I've applied those to the meta creatures in this video. So hopefully you found that useful. If you like more of these kind of analytical videos, then please do let me know. Please do add comments below, and I'll do more of them. Okay. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed it. That's it for now. See you soon. Goodbye. Thank you very much for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it or found it informative. Please do provide feedback in the description below. I always respond to comments, so please feel free to add your comments, feedback or suggestions. Okay, until next time, this is Alien Newt.